Not much, but use what you've got, right? Come to the Lord's Word and open it up and see what He's got to say. Dig in, see what you can learn. That's the whole point of it. A lot of lessons here from Jacob. We're learning just one after another, each chapter as we go. And really, we really haven't done any justice to this man and his life and the lessons we can learn. We've just been scratching the surface. Talked with Sam last night. We had youth group last night. Got into a lengthy discussion about new life and walking in the Lord and the importance of just staying steadfast and not giving up. Had a lengthy discussion about that. Um, and, I told Sam afterwards, I said, we just scratched the surface. God's word is so incredible, as you know, that a little child can open it and read it and understand what's going on in there. And, just the most simple premise of it is you can easily grasp it. But then it's so deep that you can study it, and study your whole life, and you can't get everything out of it. The scholar can spend a lifetime, 2, 3 lifetimes reading and studying this book and never dig all the gold out of it. It just continues to give up the wonderful riches that come out of this book. So we've scratched the surface of Jacob's life. There's a lot to learn here. Like I say, when we go through these chapters, I'm kind of picking out one idea, but there's much, much more there. In fact, when we talked about him wrestling with God there at the Jabbok stream, you know, you could talk about that in like 5 or 6, maybe 10 different ways. I just picked one way to discuss it. And so it is when we come to this chapter, chapter 33, where Jacob finally meets Esau after 20 years of being estranged from each other. He's had the difficult peace that he's made with Esau, and they had to, put up a boundary stone for their peace. And he was angry there, and Laban was angry, and they had to come to an agreement. And then he comes to the Lord, and he's broken down and has to really face himself. He sends for a present out to his brother, hoping, I think probably in his mind, hoping against hope that he can somehow appease his brother. And now the day comes where he has to face his brother. 20 years of anger. Uh, he knows he's got to go face that. And are they both wrong? Yeah, I think they're both wrong to some degree. They both help make this fight. If Jacob hadn't been so cunning and deceitful in his dealings with his brother, and if his brother hadn't been so angry and hurt and pledging to vow his brother, who knows, maybe 20 years of fear and resentment could have been, I'm sure it could have been completely avoided, but they didn't. And so they've had 20 years to chew on this, and now they're coming together. Here's Esau coming with 400 men, presumably armed. It doesn't say they're armed, but we presume that he's coming with an armed contingent of men to face his brother. Here's Jacob with animals, wives, and children. He doesn't have any soldiers with him. And so he's sending half his possessions out as, terms of peace before he ever comes to him. And Esau has seen these animals, these little groups of people coming toward him. And he's asked the question, what are these? Well, these are from your servant Jacob. And now here comes the face to face. This is the big climax of this. And it's right in chapter 34. And okay, how's it going to work itself out? And Jacob lifted up his eyes, this is verse 1, and looked, and behold, Esau was coming, and 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the 2 female servants, and he put the servants and their children in front, then Leah with her children, and Rachel and Joseph last of all. He himself went on before them, bowing himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. So the wives, the servants, Bilhah and Zilpah, got them with their kids. Puts Rachel in the back with Joseph, his favorite. He got him in the back. What's he do? He goes in front of all of them. He's on pushing the women and children out front. He's got them behind him. Now he's going to go out front. And once he does, he comes to his brother. He bows 7 times, and he sees him from a long ways away. He sees him bowing. He can count 1, 2, up to 7. Sees him bowing. How's this going to affect Esau? Look what it does. It says, but Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Wow. Talk about unexpected. Can you imagine the 20 years of anxiety that Jacob has had in his heart about this meeting and how it's going to go? I mean, we've read about all of his anxiety here in the last few weeks as he knows that he's leaving and heading back toward Seir, where Esau is. He's just full of anxiety about this. And what happens is Esau runs to him. What do you think of when you hear that? He runs to him and he falls on his neck and he weeps and he kisses him. You think of the father in the parable, don't you? You think about the prodigal son who's on his way back and he's rehearsing in his mind the speech of how he can go and say, I'm not fit to be a son anymore. Just make me a servant. And the father is watching continually for this son. And the day he sees him, he runs to him against all convention, propriety, and decency, runs to the son, and he falls on his neck and kisses him. God is all about reconciliation. That's what he wants. Ever since that first bite of the fruit, God has wanted reconciliation with fallen human race. And that's exactly what's happened here. Esau has been wanting reconciliation. And when he sees his brother come to him in abject submission to him, it breaks his heart. And what can he do except run to him? When he's coming with the armed men, he doesn't know what to expect either. I mean, he's probably thinking, well, here it comes. Here's the battle. He's coming. He sees the presence and is wondering what's going on with this. Keeps hearing, my Lord Esau, your servant Jacob, keeps hearing this phrase over and over. God's working on his heart too. And so God's working on Esau's heart. God's worked on Jacob's heart. They come together, and when they come together, they're brothers. And we have such a limited picture of these brothers and the relationship with each other, where you see one is favored by father, one's favored by mother, one's a hunter, one is a shepherd and hangs out by the tents, one comes in famished and in haste he sells his birthright to the other. You see one who deceives father, with the help of mother, and you just see these limited snapshots of a day or two or three or four in time. And you miss the fact that these boys grew up together. They're twins. And, they played together and they planned together. They sat together with their parents. They had meals together. They had their holidays together. They had all these wonderful times together that makes up family. And now they're estranged from each other. And they're remembering the good times. They're not thinking of the hard times. Of course, those hard times, you've always had those in the back of your mind, but we miss the good times. We miss the family. We miss that time where things were going well. And when they see each other, they think it can be good again. Okay, here he comes in submission. It can be good again. They run to each other and they hug each other, and they're brothers again. And if anybody misses that and they say, well, it's just, well, they've missed the point. You can't be so cynical. You have to say, okay, this is a beautiful thing that's happened here. Does it make for this long lasting peace? Yeah, it does. The present had its effect. The submission had its effect. The humility, when Jacob was touched by God in the most, powerful sense, he was a changed man. And suddenly he's not thinking, well, the birthright was mine from in the womb. He's not thinking that. He's not thinking, well, he sold that to me in a foolish, bit uh, of hunger. He's not thinking any of that. All he's thinking is, I want to have things right between us. And it's a strange thing for us in 21st century America to look back thousands of years and say, What's with all the bowing 7 times? What's that? Well, it's all symbolic. That's the way they did it, just like giving up the present. It's all symbolic. You wouldn't do that today. Somebody you've got some sort of, you know, heartache with, you're not going to give them half your possessions and go bowing and scraping. We don't act like that. But what can we do? We can be submissive to them. We can say, look, I own it too. It's partly my fault too. Or it's all my fault. I think that's how he's coming at it with it's my fault. It's not your fault, it's my fault. And here's the Christian response, right? The Christian response is to say reconciliation is the most important thing. I don't have any face to save here in this thing. Don't have any pride. Pride is gone. What's left? What's left is the hope of reconciliation. And so what's going to take? And so you go to your brother who's offended or your sister who's offended, and oh my goodness, don't we get offended over the smallest things? And to go to them and say, look, what's it going to take to make peace? Because everybody wants peace. We don't want to be tossing and turning on our beds at night thinking, oh, this guy, I just can't stand to see his face. And, you know how it is. You get filled with anxiety for these difficulties, and there's no reason for it. Just make peace with people. He made peace with God. If you can make peace with God, you can make peace with your brother. And if you can't make peace with your brother, have you really made peace with God? That's what I wonder. And so you can do it. And so what you need to do is it's just drop the nonsense and say, let's live together in harmony. Well, there's a lot more that happens here. I'm not going to go into all this because it's more of this sort of I don't know, the Eastern way of dealing with each other, and you take the present, and I don't want the present. You must have the present. Oh, I don't dare take the present. You have to have the present. Okay, I'll take the present. I mean, there's so much of that in the Old Testament, and you're like, what is going on? Just take the present, right? But that's not how they acted back then. It was they had this big show going on, and then come stay with me. Oh, I can't bear to stay with you. I'm going to go over here, and so they split up and then he goes over, Jacob goes over, and he stays in a place called Shechem. And something absolutely horrific happens in Shechem. I'm going to skip that. Tomorrow, when we talk about lessons with Jacob, we're jumping right to the end of the story because there's a lot of other things that I'd like to talk to you about. But we're going to skip that, read that chapter, and see what happens in chapter 34. Heartbreaking. We're going to jump to the end and wrap this up tomorrow. But I hope we learn something from it that as God touches us and changes our life must by necessity be affected in every relationship, and particularly those that we have difficulty with. So if you know somebody that has got heartache against you, just go to them, humble yourself, let go of the pride, let go of whatever arguments you may have, and just say, hey, how are we going to work this out? Because it's time to put this behind us. And that's what we've been learning over and over and over again. These are the lessons we get from Jacob. And I hope that you've been learning them, and I hope you've been putting them in practice. And I need to put them in practice in my life whenever something like this comes up, because something like this is bound to come up, right? You're living with people, you're bound to have some sort of a disagreement. Um, Deal with it in a godly way and move forward in peace. That way, your mind can be occupied on what you're doing for the Lord and not on some sort of revenge, which is a horrible thing to think about. So, anyway, that's all I've got for you today. We've got a funeral today. Our dear sister Irene, who served the church so faithfully for decades, I'm going to have her service today. But I pray that you have a great day in the Lord, and hopefully, we'll see you all here tomorrow as we wrap up the life of Jacob. Have a great day.